We just wanna travel the world, the world, the world, travel the world.
Hello, adventurers, and welcome back to the Our Offbeat Life podcast. Today, we're excited to introduce you to Christie Ogden. So, hello, Christie.
Hi,
How are you today?
I'm good.
Good. Where are you joining us from today? Let everybody know your situation.
I'm joining from Harrison Hot Springs, BC, Canada, which is on the West Coast. But my partner and my kids are in the Dominican Republic right now, and they have been for like the last 10 months. But they are coming back. The goal is for everybody to be reunited now that I'm working here, like long term. To
Long term.
The
Yes.
well, it's not long term, it's more we have a goal, and in order to save money fast, this is part of that goal.
That
So,
makes sense. That makes sense. So, this is really cool because you've got a really interesting story to talk about. Can you tell everybody how you kind of got started and how long it's been since you've been traveling?
I started 13 years ago. I had always wanted to travel, and I had 4 kids, and I thought, "Okay, when my 4 kids are bigger and move out, then I can travel because by then I'll be 40." Well, then my youngest of my 4 kids was 10 and, uh-oh, I got pregnant again, and I was like, "Well, now I'm never gonna travel." So, I was a single mom for, quite a while, and then I met this guy, obviously, and became pregnant, and, he lost his job, so we were just living on my income, which was not enough at all, and, like, the power was getting cut off, like, all the utilities were getting cut off, it was winter time. I didn't know how I was gonna feed my kids tomorrow, never mind for the month, and so that year, I had to sit my kids down and say, like, "We can't do Christmas. I can't even feed you. I can't how am I gonna get you a gift?" And they were like, "Oh, it's okay. We can do Christmas when we have more money. Don't worry about it, mom." And so we did that, and then, sorry, it makes me teary because it was a hard time. So we
Mhm.
did that, and then Christmas passed and everything was still kinda crappy, and stuff was getting cut off, and I was like, "Okay, there has to be a better way?" And my mom had bought a house years before in the middle of nowhere in Saskatchewan, and if you're from Canada, Saskatchewan is like the abyss, like, nobody wants to live there. So, I called my mom and I said, "Can you help me buy a house?" And she said, "Sure." So, I went out there, I made arrangements with this lady to buy her house for $8,000. I was just gonna make payments. So, we got there, we moved in, and I was like, "This just doesn't feel like home," you know? And so one night, I was feeding the baby, and I got on Kijiji, and I was like, "I've always wanted to live in a school bus." That's been what I wanted to do. So, in the middle of the night, I make this post on Kijiji. I'm like, "I'm a single mom, and I have this dream. I wanna live in a school bus. This is my dream bus. If anybody has it, let me know." And I kinda thought to myself, if it happens, it's meant to be, and if it doesn't happen, well, we're supposed to have this crappy life. And, like, a week or 2 later, this guy messaged me and he said, "I have a bus. It's exactly what you want. You know, you can come out and check it out." Well, it's January, and it is cold and snowy and blowing. So I drove 3 hours to go see this bus with all my kids with me because I had to. We get there, I can't test drive the bus because it's snowed in, but he starts it for me, so I know it runs. I'm like, "Okay." And then we go in the house to make the deal, and, like, he was asking for $1,000, so I had exactly $1,000, but I was like, "This is all I have." So, like, I don't know how I'm gonna feed my kids for 2 weeks until money comes again, but I'm going to get this bus, And they were super religious, and I'm not, but whatever. So I went in and he said, "My wife and I have been praying all day, that the right person would get the bus, and we feel it's you. And we know that you probably don't have a lot of money and Christmas is coming. So we'll take 3 payments. You only have to give us $300 right now." And I was like, okay. And so then I went back later, couple weeks later, when the snow wasn't so bad, and I went to pick the bus up, and I was gonna pay them the rest of the money, and he said, "No, no, we just need 1 payment, and then you can pay us the other payment later." So they were willing to let me take the bus and trust that I was gonna make this last payment, and I was like, "Wow, okay." So we got the bus and kinda, sorta renovated it into a motorhome because I didn't have a lot of money, so unless it was free on Kijiji, we didn't have it. So it was pretty much like an old sofa and, like, those little camp stoves that you connect, like, a gas source to, a little gas bottle.
Hmm.
It was pretty much that, but we told the lady we weren't buying the house anymore. We got rid of all of our stuff, moved into the van, and left. So it was me and my partner at the time, and uh, 2 kids and a baby, 3 dogs, a cat, and I think we had 2 guinea pigs. I'm not even sure, but the bus was full. And we went out and we were traveling around Canada in this bus, and so we would find free places to stay because we didn't have a lot of money. And then I was like, winter's coming and we're going to get cold because there's it's not set up for winter and it's going to be really cold. And I was like, okay, so what do I do? So in a few years before, I had been to Dominican Republic on a vacation with a friend of mine, and we had met this guy, and I called her and I said, "Do you have his number still?" And she said, "Yeah, but," she said, "Don't date him." And I'm like, "No, no, I don't wanna date him. Just wanna I just wanna talk to him." So I called him and I said, "Do you remember me?" And he said, "Yes, yes, of course." And I'm like, "Right, sure you do, but whatever." So I asked him if he would help me rent a house, and he said, "Sure." So he said, "Call me back on Wednesday." 'Cause at that time, he didn't do Facebook, he didn't know how to do anything. Like, if you sent him an email, he'd say, "Okay, I go check it." But you had to call him and tell him that you sent him an email. So he says, "Call me back on Wednesday," which was a couple days later. So I called him back and he said, "I found a house for you for $100. So it's $100 for the rent and $100 for the deposit, and then he could rent a car for me for $50." So I sent him by Western Union $250. I bought tickets to go to the Dominican Republic. And at this time, I didn't have the partner anymore. So it was just me, 2 kids, and a baby. And so I was like, I bought tickets to go to the Dominican Republic. And then we had $300 for the next like 27 days. And I was like, okay, it better work because I don't have money to go home. So we got there. We got to this house that we had never seen before, and it was cute, you know? And, my friend, who turned out to be a really, really good friend, but this guy that I barely knew, his mom lived up the mountain, and they call it a plantation, but pretty much it's just this big plot of land, and things grow there. So, like, mangoes and coconuts and all kinds of stuff. And so every second day he would go up to his mom's and he'd come back with 2 big rice sacks full of food, like, that we could eat, and
Hmm.
drop it on my doorstep because he knew I didn't have very much food. And,
Aw.
and then later I said to him, "What do I owe you?" And he said, "Nothing, because you're family." And I was like, "Okay." And so I kind of figured, like, I had 0 plan. I highly don't recommend that, but I had 0 plan. I just knew that I would rather be destitute on a beach than in Canada in the winter. So I, I had a camera like a good camera because I used to do photography, and I brought it with me. And the kids and I would go to the beach and we'd sit on the beach and I'd take pictures of kite surfers. And then as I'd take the memory card out, put it in my tablet, and then as they came in, I would say, "Hey, I took some pictures of you while you were out kite surfing," and I'd show them the pictures. And I had a little card printed up with like prices, like you can get 3 photos for $150 or whatever, right? And they would just
Yeah.
PayPal it
Yeah.
to me, and then I would email them the pictures without editing, nothing done, just the raw pictures, email them to them, and that was how I made money my first year.
That story has all the emotions in it.
Yeah, so, like, a lot it's funny because a lot of people, when they think they wanna start this lifestyle, they think about the last vacation they went on that was a week, and it was like, "Okay, that vacation cost me $4,000. So times that by 4 weeks, I'm gonna need $12,000 a month. Nope, I can't do it," you know? Instead of
Yeah.
realizing that there's a whole different way of doing things, right?
Yeah. And we all have different ways of
The
doing it. And that's part of the reason for this podcast is to show people there are as many ways to live this lifestyle as there are people living this lifestyle. Um,
Right,
and your
right.
way, yes, you had a very rocky start, very emotional start to it. Sounds like you've met some amazing people along the way who've helped you, and you've found your way in this world.
Yeah, exactly. Like, everywhere we go, my kids find grandparents because my husband's parents are gone and my parents are gone. So, but everywhere we go, they find grandparents, you know? Like, we're talking about
Neat, very
coming
neat.
back to Canada now. And my youngest son said, "Well, are we gonna have a Canada grandma?" I'm like, "Yes, we can find you a Canada grandma."
Very cool. Well, let's let people get to know you a little bit, other than outside that story. So, I'd like to do a quick lightning round. You just give me your thoughts. All right.
Sure.
So, coffee or tea?
Tea.
Okay. Cat or dog?
Ooh, I really like dogs, but we have cats.
Ah, okay. Pool or beach?
The beach.
Beach. Okay. City
Yeah.
or country?
Country or small town? I don't like big
Yeah, I get
cities at
that.
all.
No. Would you rather be able to understand and speak every language in the world or be able to teleport anywhere at any time?
Mm, I think speak every language. I really like languages.
Yeah, that's fun. All right, and finally, imagine this. You get off your plane at your next destination, and you arrive into the zombie apocalypse. You're able to get to your bags. What's the first thing you would grab and why?
I don't know because I don't know a whole lot about zombies, so I would probably just grab something to eat and hope for the best.
There you go. All right, food, it's very important.
I know, right?
I know, I know. They don't always show that in those zombie shows. All right, well, Christy, now, do you prefer fast travel or slow travel?
We do a lot of slow travel. My 13-year-old is autistic and he does not do well with fast travel. We tried it in Mexico and
Uh-huh.
we had to
Uh-huh.
stop. Like we were in Mexico for 5 months and the plan was to go to like all these different places. And yeah, it just wasn't working. So we did a month in 5 different places and he was okay with that. But a month is pretty much his maximum for fast travel.
Aha, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the routines and everything like that, I get it, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, the routines and more so just ha he likes we need to have a lot of down days, and when you're only in a place for a couple of days, you're kind of forced to do everything all at once, you know? So,
Yeah, that definitely makes that must make sense. Yeah. So then, if since you prefer the slow travel nowadays, what kind of places do you stay in? I know you're now moving into this pull along. You said right, the fifth wheel.
yeah, yeah. Um, normally we, um we spend a lot of time in the Dominican Republic because we have, like, almost like family there, but also because you can generally stay as long as you want, you just pay a fee when you leave, so I like that. I don't like the whole, "Oh, we only have 29 days here. We're on day 28. What are we gonna do?" You know? So, I like that we can stay as long as we want because 'cause we're kind of fly by the seat of our pants kinda people where we don't really know what we're doing next week, never mind 3 months from now. So, yeah.
I
Um,
get that.
but normally what I do to find a place to rent, in Mexico it's worked everywhere except one place in Mexico, and we've been to I don't know how many countries, but a lot, and, but normally what I do is I rent a cheap hotel, and then we just walk around the neighborhood and look for rent signs, and then we call them or we get somebody, like, who works at the hotel to call them and ask how much the rent is. Because usually if you get a local to call, it's a lot cheaper than if you call and you speak the language, but not great, you know? They're like, "Oh, it's a tourist. Let's charge them $3,000." Whereas for a local, it's 200, you know, kinda thing.
Yeah.
So, I normally do that, but in this one place in Mexico, it didn't work because they had for rent signs, but there was no phone numbers. I'm like, "What are you supposed to do? Stand here at the gate and hope somebody comes?" Like, it was really strange.
What'd you end up doing?
Or, um I asked around at the hotel, and the lady at the hotel had these rooms, but they were literally big enough for one double bed and a little bit of floor space. So we went to Walmart and we got a double air mattress, and that was on the floor for 2 kids, and then me and the other kids slept on the bed, and it was only for, like, 27 days, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it wasn't ideal. Um But then, like and then other times I'll join, like, local buy and sell groups, and then I'll go on Google Translate and I'll type out what I'm looking for, and then I put it in as a post, and normally I'm able to find something. So,
Okay.
I've rented off of Airbnb one time in 13 years.
That's an accomplishment
I
to not
will
have to worry about and live
Yeah.
and worry about Airbnbs because I mean that's our fallback if we have to, but it's only usually for short stays.
Right. Yeah, but I know people who do it for, like, long stays, and I'm just like, "Oh, okay." Like, to me, it's just strange, you know? But
Yeah,
yeah,
I get it. I get it. Now, at
yeah.
the beginning, you mentioned you started with 0 plan. Um,
Yes.
how do you navigate the uncertainties? And what are, like, some of the key lessons that you've learned along the way?
Um, well, I was a single mom for many, many years, like, probably 15 over the whole span. Um, and my whole philosophy was, it's gonna work out because never in my life have I had to live in a refrigerator box on somebody's lawn in all my years of being a parent. And, I mean,
That's some positive thinking.
I don't say it to be funny, but, you know, it's true, like, you know, things usually work out. Maybe not the way that we plan them to, but they usually work out, you know? And so I just had to kind of I wasn't very positive when I started, I'll tell you that, but I am now, just from what I've had to learn over the years of traveling, you know? And the same with like thinking on your feet and problem solving. I wasn't very good at that
Mhm.
before, but I am now, because like, oh, I rented this condo off of Airbnb and then I get here and it's a scam and no one knows what I'm talking about and there's a family living in here. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And then it's like,
Yeah.
now what do I do? You know, I've got kids sitting here waiting to go inside. What do I do now? So you kind of figure it out, right? Because you have
Yeah.
to.
Oh, yeah. That same thing happened to us in El Calafate, when we were in Argentina. We got there, and it was one of the very only times that we've had that kind of scammy Airbnb not existing type place. But yeah, those are scary, or it very makes you uncertain when it happens.
Well, for sure. Because like when I called them, I'm like, okay, so like I'm here. There's a family here. They know nothing about what I'm talking about. And she's like, well, are you sure? Maybe you don't speak the language. Nope, I'm pretty sure. You know,
Wow.
like it's
Yeah.
almost like they think that you're
So
trying to scam them.
yeah, and yeah, you get that sometimes from them. What happened?
Yeah.
How did you get that resolved?
Um, there was like this parking attendant downstairs. So I asked him, I'm like, is there a hotel nearby? And he said, yeah, there's one just around the corner. So, and I think it was through booking.com. I don't think it was through Airbnb. But anyway, I called them and they said, okay, we'll refund you your money. And then whatever you have to pay for the hotel, we'll give you the difference back as well. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So I went and I paid for this hotel and then they gave me the money back. And it looked like a nice hotel. So I have my
Yeah.
17-year-old with me. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. We get into the hotel room and no idea whether it was the honeymoon suite or what it was, but we have this giant king size bed with this clear glass cylindrical shower at the end of the bed with disco lights. And my
Wow.
son's like, if you're taking a shower, I'm leaving. My 17-year-old. It was horrifying for him. His brothers thought it was the greatest thing ever, but my 17-year-old was like, "Mom, this is disgusting."
My
Anyway,
my tween would love that. Yeah.
so it was pretty funny, you know.
Very interesting.
We would
Yes.
not have been able to have a disco shower if that did not happen, just saying. I try and teach my kids to think of the positive,
Yeah.
in all things. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. We went from living in this really nice area to I w- I wanted to save money. So, and that place was $500 and I wanted to save money. So there's like a barrio behind us, which is like a lower income neighborhood. And so I went walking around there and I found a house for rent. It was $75 and it's got 2 bedrooms and I'm like, "Okay." So I rented it. Moved in there. Well, we only got power like a couple of days a week, and we only got water a couple of days a week, and only 1 day a week do you get water and power on the same day, laundry. And I'm like, okay. So stuck it out. We lived there for a year,
A
and
year.
my son and I, my son and I were talking. That he was 10 at that time, and then when he was 16, he was sitting on my bed talking, and we were talking about like favorite places that we've lived. And I said, "What was your favorite house that we've lived?" And we've lived a lot of places, right? And he said, "The greenhouse." I'm like, "The greenhouse? What greenhouse?" He goes, "In the barrio." I'm like, "Y- You liked that place?" And he's like, "Yeah, I had lots of friends and I could do this and I could do that." As an adult, I thought it was a horrible, horrible place and never want to go back there. And my kid thinks it's the best thing on earth because when we moved there, I was like, "Oh, guys, look, we have so much freedom. You guys can go play." Because at the other place, it was there was a busy by there and it just wasn't safe. But there, I'm like, "You guys can go out and hang out in the street." And they had friends. So for them, it was a great experience, you know?
Wow. Yeah,
But
definitely.
but
It's interesting.
but I think had I been negative and said, "Oh, this place is horrible. I hate it here," "Oh, it's terrible," my kids would have thought it was terrible too.
Yeah. Your mindset
So,
definitely rubs off on them when they can see and hear the feelings from you coming from you as well. Yeah, I get that. So
yeah. So I try and do that. Like even when situations aren't ideal, I try and focus on the positive so that my kids aren't negative as well.
that's a good parenting philosophy. How else do you really manage your parenting while traveling at the same time?
Yeah, my oldest is 29 and my youngest is 9. Yeah,
So
there's a big gap in there.
there's a gap in there, yes. So education then. How did you factor that in during the early days and then like what's your philosophy nowadays?
Um, well, I've been homeschooling for 22 years. So I was already homeschooling and already unschooling by the time that we started world schooling. So it wasn't a big deal. Like it was like, oh, this is a great educational experience for them, like, all this kind of stuff, right? Um, but now I think I'm just more laid back, you know, like we live in a tiny little village right now, and my boys pretty much have run of the village. And we have credit at the store, and they can go to the store and get something. And I'm okay with pretty much anything because I know it's not in the whole, like in the grand scheme of things, it's not really going to matter if he has a chocolate bar for breakfast. Probably not going to die from it because every other day he's going to eat something decent. But
Yeah.
if today he's
Yeah.
stuck on having a chocolate bar for breakfast, well, he probably won't die from it, you know. And my adult kids say, "You never would have let us do that." So I'm not sure if it's because I'm old and tired now or if it's that my parenting skills have changed, but
Well, and you
it is
said
what
your
it is.
oldest is in his 20s now, and he grew up in this
Yeah.
lifestyle. So, can you address those concerns that parents have? How is my child going to turn out if I decide to travel the world with them while they're young?
Yeah. Daughter who's 25 and my son who's 23, they traveled with me. The other 2 chose not to, they went to live with their dad. But my daughter was 13 when we started, and and she'd always been unschooled, never been to school except for, I think, a couple of months. She wanted to try school, and then she decided that it wasn't for her, and out she came again. Um, but, um but yeah, so when we when she was 16, we came back to Canada, and she went to live with her dad because she had a high school diploma. So she went to school for the very first time in grade 11, and she got honors. She got credits for classes that she never took. Like she got credits for grade 10, 11, and 12 Spanish because she learned Spanish in the Dominican Republic. She could read it, she could write and speak it. They gave her credits for all three. She got credits for like science classes that she never took. I have no idea how she knew all that stuff because I certainly didn't sit down and teach her that. Um, she knew about like history stuff, like she passed all of the social studies exams for 10 and 11. Um, and she graduated the next year with her friends. So she graduated in 2 years instead of 3 years, um, with enough credits to graduate. And then um, when she was 13, we were talking about what she wanted to be when she grew up. And she said, "Well, I want to be a hairdresser." And I said, well, you know, you're really high maintenance. And so you either need to marry a really rich guy or you need to get a job that pays a whole money. So she went online and she looked up the best paying jobs and she found out that welders and outer welders make the most money. So that's what she does.
Wow.
Yeah, you know.
That's impressive.
And then
She
my youngest of the 4 adult kids, he was with me in the Dominican Republic and he said, "Turn 18, I'm going back to Canada. I'm gonna get a job." Okay. So he stayed with a friend of mine, and my friend's rule was you have to be working or you have to go to school. And he had 0 desire to go to school. So he found a job doing snow removal and got to like 30 below 0 and freezing, and he had to be out there shoveling snow. And he was, this isn't the job for me. But he really wanted to get into construction, but everybody experience. So he went on Kijiji and he wrote in Kijiji in Spanish, construction jobs, and a whole bunch came up and they were all in Spanish from like, Latino people living in Canada in these construction companies. And so he emailed them in Spanish. And this guy called him and spoke to him in Spanish and said, "Okay, tomorrow I'll pick you up and I'll try you out. And good, I'll keep you on." And he said, "Okay." And picked him up and Axel got in the car and he said, "But you're white." And Axel said, "Yeah." And he speaks Spanish. Axel said, "Yeah." So he worked for that guy for 3 years.
Wow.
I think he was 19 at that time. Yes, he worked for that guy for 3 years, saved up his money, and then he left in November to go to the Dominican Republic. He's been there ever since, and his boss told him when he runs out of money, call him and he'll buy him a ticket and he can work for him again.
Wow. Sounds like
So
your children have
they
good
figure
work
it out.
ethics.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and it wasn't because I made them, work every day or you know what I mean? It
Mhm.
just kind of happens, you know?
Very. Yeah.
So I
That's
remember
really cool.
when they were little and I was unschooling and I was like, how are they ever like people would say to me, how are they ever gonna cope in real world when they can't even get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, or you don't make them sit down and have a meal at noon or whatever. And they're doing fine, you know?
Yeah. I hear those concerns too, and I think I think to myself, there are a million different lifestyles somebody can lead. They don't have to necessarily have the 9 to 5 banker job. There's also people that have to work at nights, and if those people like getting up later, so be it. There's also people who need all different kinds of work jobs, different things. This world needs people to do and fill all different types of roles. And
It's
so
true. And the thing
no,
is like if you're not daytime person, you can always find a nighttime job.
Mhm, exactly.
Whatever works.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
And you mentioned at the beginning that you started out with a very limited budget. Um, so you mentioned some of the things that
Yep.
people helped you out. What other creative solutions did you have uh, along the way? And like what kind of tips can you offer for families that are considering world schooling on a tight budget?
So we've always been on a tight budget. Like I haven't always struggled for money, but I like to keep my budget small because then there's more for other stuff, like
Mhm.
more for buying tickets to go to other places and all that kind of stuff. So I try and keep our budget under $1,500, which when you're living in Canada or the US doesn't sound like much, especially when you're paying more than that for just your rent or your mortgage or whatever. But once you kinda drop the whole conventional lifestyle, then things are a lot cheaper. Like when you don't have a mortgage and you don't have a car payment, there's a lot less that you need to cover, right? Um, and so we've always lived on $1,500 a month. And sometimes it's been less. There have been times when I've lived on $600 a month, which was super duper tight, but we're here and we managed. Um, so like, but it's more the way that you think, I think, like I know exactly how many who's its or whatnots I need to sell to get $1,500. And so normally when we're out traveling, I work my butt off the first 1 or 2 weeks and I make my $1,500 and then I sit back and I relax and I take it easy and then we do it again, you know? But over the years, I've done so many things. I've sold local artists' works online for a percentage. I've done photography. I've had a where we lived, the school was either in the morning or in the evening, and I had a before and after school club for kids to learn English and get help with their homework. I've done tutoring for like affluent families who want tutoring for their kids. I've taught English online. I've I've done a bunch of stuff. Basically, it's just as a single mom in Canada living a conventional life, I did whatever I needed to do to keep a roof over our heads and food in the refrigerator. And it's kind of the same with traveling. Like it's a priority for me. So I do what I need to do to keep us traveling, you know? And when it's not a priority anymore, then I won't do it.
Mhm. So why is it a priority? Why do you feel that traveling is a priority for you?
Honestly, I don't know. It's just this thing. Like even now, I've Canada 10 months and I'm kind of like, oh, where should we go? Like, what should, yeah, I don't, I don't understand why I get so restless, but I do, you know? And I think part of it is like I like to think that every day is an adventure and every day is a great going to be a great experience. And so for me, go a new place feeds on adventure.
Yeah, makes sense. That makes sense. What what are your most memorable cultural experiences that you and your kids have had while traveling?
Um, we've had a whole lot. Um, we've we've experienced like a funeral in the Dominican Republic. We thought we were just going for like the luncheon, like in Canada and the US, when there's a funeral, like they have the part at the funeral home and then they have like the luncheon afterwards. So we thought we were going to this luncheon and it was at the mom's house, you know. It was grandma that had died. We knew her. So we go to this luncheon and then my daughter went in the house to go to the bath and she comes out with this little horror in her house and she goes, "Mom, do not go in the house." I said, "Why?" And she goes, "Grandma and her cough on the table." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting." So it was an eye opener. Like we had to have a discussion about how different people do different things for funerals, and it was interesting, you know. And
Yeah,
then
definitely.
another time we were living in this poor area, and my two little were little at the time. My youngest was a baby, and my other one was, I think he was about 5. It was like the day before Christmas. Like it was December 23rd. And these two little boys were outside playing with my son. And I said, "Oh, what's that going to bring you?" And the one little boy, he just looks at me with this look on my face like I was the stupidest person he had ever met. And and he says, "Santa's only for rich people and white kids on TV." And I was like, "What?" You know? But, if you think about it, if mom and dad don't have enough money to even buy food, they don't have enough money for Santa, you know? And and that's when it opened my eyes that not everybody rates, Christmas or holidays the same way that we do in our country. And I knew that as an adult, but I never really knew it more than just kind of a fleeting thought, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But this really drove it home that it was like, "Oh, then what do you do for Christmas?" You know? So it was really interesting, you know?
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Different perspective for sure.
Mhm. And then, like, trying to explain to other people from other countries what Thanksgiving is. Like, you have a day to be thankful. And they're like, "Oh, is it like is it your birthday?" And I'm, "No, no, it's the day that we're thankful for." And they're like, "Aren't you thankful every day?" Like, you know, they trying to explain this whole holiday was like, "Mm, yeah," but it was
Yeah.
interesting.
What's next on the horizon? What's your next big adventure going to be?
Right now, I'm working full time, and I have my online business as well, but I'm working in person so that we can save money because we want to get another bus, actually convert it this time, and drive it down to Mexico and buy some property. So,
Uh,
and then stay in Mexico. Yeah, because Mexico, it's easier to get back and forth to Canada, and
yeah.
Dominican Republic is expensive to get back and forth. And it's an island, so everything's expensive there because it has to be shipped or by boat flown in, whereas Mexico, they can just drive stuff in. So that's the plan.
Very cool. Okay. Well,
Right.
what advice
Mhm.
then do you want to give to families that are interested in this world schooling lifestyle, but they might be hesitant to take that first step?
Mhm. I think, like, more of a plan than what I have, but but I think a lot of people really overthink it, like, it's like, "Oh, in 7 years, we're gonna start world schooling because then the kids will be the perfect age, and we'll have enough money, and this, and this, and this," like, I don't think it needs to be that regimented. Like, if you wait until everything is perfectly aligned and perfect, it's never gonna happen because, like, nothing is ever gonna be perfect. Nothing is ever going to be exactly how you want it? So as long as you have, you know, a little bit of cushion and some form of online income, just go. And even if you don't go for the whole time, like I met my husband 7 years ago, and I had already been world schooling for 6 years, and so when I met him, he wasn't sure that he wanted to travel, and I was like, "Well, that's fine. So you can work and we'll go travel?" And so for a while there, he was working and we were traveling, and then one time he called me, we'd been gone for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and he said, "I really miss you guys. I'm gonna quit my job and come there." Okay. So he quit his job, came, and he did that like twice. And then the last time he's like, "Okay, I'm not doing that anymore. I just want to be with you guys. So I'll do what I do?" So a lot of times I see women, especially, I really want to do this, but my husband doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to give up his job, doesn't want to whatever. Then just do a trial run and go for like 3 months or 4 months or whatever and see if it's going to work?
Yeah. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's also, I mean, if you make it work, you can make it work. You're not the first person to
Right.
tell me that they've had that, like, the husband doesn't want us to travel, but they love it. It's their life, and you were doing it before him anyway. So, like, I mean, he kind of knew what he was getting into, I guess.
Right. Well, he did, and that's the thing, right? Like, I said to him one time I think it was last year, 'cause I went on this big bike trip, and, I said to him, I said, "Sometimes I'm kinda worried that, you just go along with what I want because I'll just go do it anyway." And he said, "I know you'll go do it anyway, but I do wanna join you." And I'm like, "Okay, as long as that's the deal," right? Like, but yeah, like, you can figure it out. Like, you can find a compromise or a way to make it work. Like, it doesn't have to be, "My husband doesn't want to, so I'm never going." You know what I mean?
Right.
Or, "My wife doesn't want to," or whatever, right? You know?
Right.
And a lot of people say they have a million, like, negative what ifs. So it's like, "But what if we run out of money? But what if the kids don't like it? But what if, what
A
if, what
million
if,
what
what if,"
ifs.
right?
Yeah. A million.
And
Yep.
they stop,
Million.
they don't do it because of the what ifs. But then and that happened to me when I first started. I was like, "But what if we run out of money? What if I can't do it? What if the Dominican government finds out that I'm there and I don't have any money and they ship me back? What if," like, all these 100,000 what ifs? But then I started thinking and I was like, "But what if we love it? But what if we never come back?" Because one of my what ifs was like, "What if we hate it and we wanna come back?" And it's
Mhm.
like, but then I started changing it, and it was like, "But what if we love it? But what if it's great? But what if," you
That is
know, and now it's
really
like,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, so now anytime I have this fear of what if, I try and change it to a positive, like, kinda thing? And so, like,
Yeah.
I've helped other people get started, and I always tell them, like, in a notebook, write your fear, and then under it, write down, like, the worst case scenario. Like, if your fear is, what if we run out of money?" The worst case scenario is we're in a foreign country, we have no money, and we're starving, and, we're begging on the street, or whatever the case may be, right?
Right.
But then you think about, like, 3 solutions, you know, "Oh, I could" whatever for the solutions, I could make something out of beach glass and sell it, or I could, call my sister and ask for a loan of $50 to get us food, or I could, different things, right? There's always option. But it just kinda shows you that for whatever crappy situation, you can figure out a solution and doesn't have to be the worst. You know what I mean?
I do. I do. I mean, really take it
Yeah,
to that. What if it's amazing? You know?
exactly. And that's where that came from because I was like,
Mhm.
but what if it's amazing? What if it's
Yeah.
great? What if it's fabulous? So, yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. That is very cool. And I like taking it and flipping it on its head like that. Taking those what if isms, and a lot of people get stuck in the what if isms, but they get stuck in a negative pattern with what ifs. So when you turn it on its head and make it a positive like that, I love that. So
Right. And the other thing is like, if like when I first started, I was hanging out with people like me, single moms who didn't have a lot of money, who were very negative, and as soon as I said, "I wanna go travel with my kids," I heard, "Oh, you can't do that. It's too expensive. You can't do that." And they had all these negative reasons why I couldn't. But then I started joining, like, world schooling groups and finding people who were actually traveling, and they were the ones who were telling me, "You can do this. Of course you can do this. You can do this." You know? So sometimes not cutting off your friends, but changing who you're hanging out with will change how you think and what you're capable of.
excellent, excellent advice. Excellent. All
Yeah.
right. All right, so we're wrapping up here in a second. So I wanted to look at some travel trivia with you. Are you ready for that?
Yep.
All right, what is the capital of Mexico?
Mexico City, I believe.
Yes, very good. You're right. What what is the name of Guatemala's most famous ancient civilization?
The Aztecs? Is that
Aztecs,
it?
I believe, are further south. We'll go with the Mayan.
Oh, right. Yes. And there was also Mayan ruins in Mexico as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were big in this region. Yeah. All right. Now,
Yeah.
what is the name of Costa Rica's most active volcano?
I have no idea.
Have you been to Costa Rica?
No,
No, it's in a it's a pricey place.
not yet.
Trust me. You got to go there. You got to have a little bit of a budget.
That's
uh,
why I haven't been there yet.
a renal volcano. All right.
Okay.
How about Ecuador? Do you know what the currency is in Ecuador?
No, I do not.
They use the
I
American
would
or the
guess
US
peso, but
dollar.
I'm probably not right. Oh, it's the same as El Salvador.
And let's go one more. What is the
Okay.
name of the world famous ancient city in Peru that was built by the Incas?
Machu Picchu.
Yes, Machu Picchu.
Is that
Excellent.
it?
Yes, you got them.
In Peru. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I love to do some travel trivia with travelers. So
Yeah.
you talked a lot about that. You're planning on going down through Central America next. What is your final message of possibility?
I think that, anything really is possible so long as, you're positive and you put in the effort and do what it takes to make it work, really.
That's very good. Do you have any like key factors to making it possible in your opinion?
For me, it's a whole lot of out of the box thinking. Like I I don't even put myself anywhere near the box anymore. So, but yeah, so just, like I always tell people to just make a list of every little thing that you need to do before you get to your goal, whatever it
Mm.
is,
Yeah.
and then just start checking stuff off, whether that's, I need to get a passport, I need to get rid of all my stuff, I need to, whatever, right? Then just start getting all those things off, and before you know it, you're on your way.
Perfect. Well, what if people want to get in touch with you? They have some questions or anything like that. How would they reach you?
Um, I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. It is Christie Ogden Adventures. So they can reach me through there.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So I think that takes care of it for today. Do you have any parting thoughts before we go?
No, thank you for having me though.
You're welcome. Thank you for being on the show today. It was a pleasure talking to you. You have a very unique story and some great advice. I love the fact that it's really about the what if it's amazing. That's kind of like that whole theme of your travels, your life
Yes.
today.
Yes.
Take care, and we will see you again soon.
We just wanna see something bigger than us, to see and smell and taste something completely new. We just wanna travel the world, the world, the world, travel.